Buenos días a todos. Empezamos la que sería la sexta sesión de los webinarios Los Lunes de CDTI-SOST, emitidos desde la oficina del CDTI en Bruselas, la oficina SOST, y en esta segunda temporada dedicada a lo que son los partenariados, los partnerships relacionados con los clústeres del Pilar 2 de Horizonte Europa. Hoy la sesión número 6 estará dedicado a los partnerships que están relacionados con el clúster 6 en Horizonte Europa, más focalizados en la parte de Agricultura, Food Systems, Animal Health and Wellbeing. Para eso tendremos con nosotros a diferentes speakers, acompañados todo el rato por nuestro compañero José Manuel González, representante del Comité de Programa en este clúster 6 de CDTI. Para los que os unís hoy, bueno, recordaros que en esta segunda temporada de los lunes de CDTI-SOST nos centraremos en estas iniciativas que son paralelas a los clústeres en el Pilar 2 de Horizon Europe. Estamos organizando desde principios de mayo una serie de sesiones semanales todos los lunes que no son festivos ni en Bruselas ni en España, de unas sesiones de unos 60-90 minutos para ofrecer ese panorama sobre esos partenariados asociados. Y bueno, como sabéis, cada lunes a las 11 y aproximadamente hasta las 12:30, dependiendo de si la sesión es más larga, tiene más speakers, etcétera, podéis informaros sobre estas iniciativas paralelas, sus orígenes, su evolución y los pasos a continuación en las próximas semanas y meses. La inscripción siempre se abre una semana anterior y se cierra justamente a las 9 de la mañana del día del webinario. Posteriormente tenéis tanto todas las presentaciones como material, así como los vídeos colgados en la plataforma de CDTI, y los vídeos los podéis encontrar asimismo en el canal YouTube de CDTI. El objetivo principal, pues, de estas sesiones era daros una visión panorámica de todas estas iniciativas, pues para tener un mejor, digamos, posicionamiento, capacidad de influencia y de participación en estas iniciativas que acostumbran a ser una parte importante del presupuesto de Horizon Europe, en concreto aproximadamente un 50% del mismo. Simplemente anunciaros, como en todas las sesiones, que para cualquier pregunta, consulta, comentario, por favor, utilizar el chat de Questions and Answers de Zoom, porque no se va a hacer ninguna intervención en oral aparte de las de nuestros speakers. En esta sesión 6, como os he comentado, pues nos acompañarán en primer lugar pues, José Manuel González, nuestro compañero de CDTI Madrid, que dará una visión general pues, de Clúster 6, hará una focalización en los partenariados y una visión por encima de esos partnerships que están relacionados con esta parte más de agricultura y de Food Systems. Y a continuación nos acompañará la doctora Daniela Lueth, que es Policy Officer, junto con Jorge Molina, también los dos de DG RTD. Dr. Daniela Lueth is Policy Officer at the Bioeconomy and Food Systems units, and her domains are the Research and Innovation and Food System Urban Priorities, Data Technology, and Artificial Intelligence. Her colleague, Mr. Molina, is also working at the team of Food 2030 Policy Framework at DG RTD, and both of them are extensively working in regions and collaborating with the forcing of the Food System Partnership. And talking about the Food System Partnership, our last speaker will be Dr. Hugo de Vries, who is the Research Director at INRAE, this huge organization in France, and is also member of the scientific team Food Nutrition and Bioeconomy at INRAE. He is also the president of the European Federation of Food Science and Technology and task leader of the SCAR Working Group on Sustainable Food Systems. He's today with us as a coordinator of the European project Foodpots, which is a co-creating initiative and the prototype of the Sustainable Food System Partnership that will be implemented in the next month. So, without further to say, let's give the floor to our colleague, José Manuel González. Gracias, José Manuel.
Muchas gracias, Marina. Perfecto. Pues por mi parte, buenos días a todos, a toda la audiencia. Very good morning to Hugo, Daniela, and Jorge. It's a pleasure to share this few minutes with you and to listen to you to know what this partnership is about. Creo que es importante primero centrar un poquito a la audiencia en qué estamos haciendo dentro de Clúster 6 para ver el contexto de por qué estos partenariados son importantes y particularmente la parte de sistemas alimentarios. Para eso únicamente quería centrar un poquito la intervención inicial. Creo que todos somos conscientes de dónde estamos hablando del Horizonte Europa. Cuando estamos hablando del Horizonte Europa, este programa de investigación que nos va a durar estos 7 años, del 2021 al 2027, con la estructura básica de los 3 pilares, uno de ciencia excelente, mucho más básico, un pilar 3 que aparece a la derecha de la diapositiva, mucho más centrado en el crecimiento de las empresas, crecimiento empresarial, con el EIC, con los ecosistemas de innovación. Y en la parte central de la diapositiva, el pilar 2, que es el de mayor importancia presupuestaria, por lo menos en el ámbito del Horizonte Europa, y que divide las temáticas en 6 clústeres, 6 agrupaciones temáticas, desde ámbitos como la salud, la seguridad, ambiente digital, energía, movilidad, clima. En el que nos queremos centrar hoy es en el clúster 6, es alimentación y bioeconomía, si lo podemos decir únicamente, perdón, alimentación, bioeconomía, recursos naturales, agricultura y medio ambiente, o si lo queremos resumir en 2 palabras únicamente, bioeconomía y medio ambiente. Nos parece muy relevante que veáis el presupuesto que tenemos aquí asignado, 9.000 millones de euros, es muchísimo dinero, teniendo en cuenta que los programas predecesores en el Horizonte 2020, el reto social 2, que abordaba la bioeconomía, era prácticamente 3.700 millones de euros. La parte del reto social 5, que tenía que ver con el clima, con el medio ambiente y que encaja ahora en el ámbito del clúster 6, eran aproximadamente 1.600 millones de euros, esa parte del presupuesto, con lo cual hay un compromiso muy importante de la Comisión Europea por unificar primero la bioeconomía y el medio ambiente, no solo preocuparnos de la generación de biomasa, sino también del impacto que tiene en el ámbito en el que estamos viviendo, del planeta en el que estamos viviendo y del medio ambiente. Por eso la unificación en el clúster 6, tanto de la bioeconomía como del medio ambiente, nos parece una decisión muy acertada por parte de la Comisión. Y ahí tenemos 9.000 millones de euros, repito, enfatizando ese compromiso de la Comisión Europea por hacer investigación en 2 áreas que son claves para el futuro. Dentro del clúster 6 tenemos 7 áreas de intervención muy amplias. Y si decimos que el clúster 6 es básicamente bioeconomía y medio ambiente, podéis ver que en la esquina superior izquierda de la diapositiva estamos cubriendo 2 áreas de intervención, 2 áreas de trabajo muy relacionadas con el medio ambiente. La observación medioambiental, los servicios ecosistémicos, el capital natural y la biodiversidad. Eso es lo que más relación tiene con el medio ambiente. En la esquina superior derecha veis los sistemas de producción primario, agricultura, silvicultura, incluye ganadería, y la transformación en sistemas alimentarios, en alimentación, como objetivo principal en las actividades dentro del clúster 6 de la producción de biomasa de estos sistemas de producción primarios, y como en la parte inferior de la diapositiva aparecen 3 actividades, la primera centrada en toda la investigación relacionada con agua, océanos, aguas interiores, los mares, y 2 relacionadas con la economía circular. Bien los sistemas circulares, si estamos hablando de componentes inertes, o si estamos hablando de bioeconomía, economía circular en el ámbito de las cadenas de valor de base biológica, en lo que se llama los sistemas de origen biológico o la bioeconomía. Es decir, son áreas de intervención muy amplias, por lo tanto es muy complejo todo lo que estamos investigando en este clúster 6. Las oportunidades de participación son muy amplias y principalmente vamos a estar desarrollando una agenda de investigación que cumple con el programa específico que tenemos fijado para el 2021-2027. Se ha priorizado primero en un plan estratégico para el 2021-2024, a partir del cual hemos sacado las primeras convocatorias en el programa de trabajo 2021-2022 y las que tenemos ahora abiertas del 2023-2024. En cuanto a las formas de cubrir estas áreas de intervención, tenemos los típicos proyectos de investigación e innovación con unos TRLs muy próximos en todos los casos a 3, 4, 5, y también actividades de innovación con TRL 6, 7, 8 en algunos casos, para cubrir, repito, con todo este espectro de, o cubrir con todas estas áreas de intervención y las problemáticas asociadas a ellas. Pero también tenemos como una de las novedades en el Horizonte Europa lo que vienen siendo dos novedades principales. Una son las misiones de I+D, que no vamos a tratar en la sesión de hoy, pero la segunda o la última que aparece en esta diapositiva es el nuevo enfoque hacia los partenariados. Y es en lo que queremos centrar la sesión de hoy. Sabéis que hay tres tipologías principales de partenariados. La que aparece en azul en esta diapositiva son los partenariados coprogramados. Esos no encajan, no tenemos partenariados coprogramados de momento en el ámbito del clúster 6. Sí tenemos partenariados cofinanciados, que aparecen en verde en la parte central de la diapositiva, y un partenariado institucional. Los partenariados cofinanciados, y nos lo explicará ahora Daniela en unos minutos, veréis que hay que centrar un acuerdo, definir cuáles son los ámbitos de investigación y de innovación que se van a ocurrir a lo largo del partenariado, y tiene que haber un compromiso común de los socios. Un partenariado, en este caso va a estar la Comisión Europea y los países asociados, los Estados miembros y los países asociados. Va a haber cofinanciación de los Estados. Esta es la clave por la que nos parece especialmente relevante poneros las oportunidades que vamos a tener dentro del clúster 6 en este ámbito. Y se podría decir que son una continuación de los partenariados que en Horizonte Europa, Horizonte 2020, eran las ERANETS o los European Joint Program, los programas de la programación conjunta. Es una evolución hacia partenariados cofinanciados, de los que vamos a tener 7 en este Horizonte Europa en el ámbito del clúster 6. 7 en la primera programación estratégica 2021-2024. Los partenariados institucionales son un tipo de partenariados público-privado en el que la parte pública es la Comisión Europea, el socio público es la Comisión Europea, que representa esa mitad del partenariado, mientras que la parte privada es una asociación industrial, en este caso de bioindustrias, entre los cuales se define una agenda específica de investigación y que fue motivo de una sesión específica de los lunes de SOST el pasado lunes día 12, si no me equivoco, Marina. Por lo tanto, las presentaciones están disponibles si alguien quiere revisar ese partenariado. De las 7 áreas de intervención, finalmente en los programas de trabajo aparecen como áreas de trabajo específicos, que son lo que se llaman destination, y los 7 partenariados que hay, todos encajan en estas destinations. Vamos a ver que hay partenariados sobre biodiversidad, que encajan con el área 1 de trabajo de biodiversidad y servicios ecosistémicos. Dentro del Destination 2, que es el área de trabajo relacionado con la agricultura y la alimentación, hay 3 partenariados muy importantes sobre agroecología, sanidad animal y Sustainable Food Systems, sistemas alimentarios sostenibles. Personalmente, creemos que puede ser el más importante, el más relevante probablemente en lo que tiene que ver con el ámbito de trabajo del Clúster 6, y por eso hemos querido dedicarle una sesión específica. Pero también el ámbito de trabajo del Destination 5, que tiene que ver con una acción por el clima en sistemas terrestres y acuáticos también, en océanos y mares. Hay un partenariado muy relevante, que es el Water for All, así como el Destination 7. Hay 2 partenariados sobre agricultura de los datos y bioeconomía azul. Con esto, lo que queremos plantear es que la Comisión tiene ya partenariados cofinanciados que están activos. Estos son los 7 que hay, los 3 que están en la parte superior de la diapositiva sobre biodiversidad, economía azul y agua, están ya activos, ya están lanzando convocatorias. Os animamos a todos a poder chequear la página web, porque vais a ver que hay muchas oportunidades en convocatorias que ya están abiertas, y la Comisión Europea ha decidido asignar a estos partenariados un presupuesto de 1.000 millones de euros. Si recordáis, el Clúster 6 tiene un presupuesto global de 9.000 millones de euros, 1.000 van a ir para este tipo de partenariados, y nos parece especialmente relevante poneros estas oportunidades encima de la mesa para que podáis seguir vosotros desarrollando actividades en cooperación con otros países, con otras entidades de otros países, actividades de I+D+I en ámbitos de TRL, pues que irán variando, más básicos o más aplicados dependiendo de la naturaleza de las temáticas. Repito que los de 2021-2022 ya están lanzados, se está trabajando sobre ellos. Los 4 que aparecen en rojo, el de agroecología, el de sanidad animal, el de agricultura de los datos, observación medioambiental y el de sistemas alimentarios, están ahora mismo en evaluación, están en el programa de trabajo 2023-2024. Las agencias de financiación de los países se han puesto de acuerdo, han desarrollado una propuesta conjunta que han enviado a la Comisión Europea, Esa propuesta está en evaluación ahora mismo y esperamos tener noticias en breve. Eso podrá ser en el próximo mes aproximadamente, cuando recibamos la evaluación de estas convocatorias. Por parte de las entidades españolas, para que vosotros podáis participar, tenemos que estar las agencias financiadoras detrás, tenemos el compromiso, la intención, tanto la Agencia Estatal de Investigación como CDTI, de intentar participar en todos los partenariados para que las entidades españolas puedan participar en las convocatorias que surjan a continuación, y dedicamos los recursos que tenemos para que vosotros, repito, podáis participar en estas convocatorias. Eso lo vamos a ver en el próximo mes, que recibamos los resultados de evaluación, y a partir de ahí se irá trabajando en las primeras convocatorias que saldrán muy probablemente pronto en 2024. Es lo que os podemos decir hasta ahora. Ved que el presupuesto es muy relevante, que queremos que esas oportunidades las podáis aprovechar, y para eso el equipo que tenemos en CDTI estaremos en disposición de trabajar para vosotros. Fijaros que, repito, el más relevante es el que tiene que ver con Food Systems. Para eso hemos dedicado la jornada específica de hoy. Daniela, Hugo nos van a explicar específicamente las peculiaridades de este partenariado, para que veáis cómo vuestras entidades pueden participar y qué oportunidades van a ofrecer. Termino presentando el equipo de CDTI. Ya sabéis que estamos Lidia, Marta de Diego, Marta Conde, Juan Carlos y yo para ayudaros en cualquier cosa que necesitéis. Será un placer por nuestra parte poderos ayudar, bien para las convocatorias del Clúster 6, bien para orientaros a quién podéis dirigir vuestras consultas o cómo pueden estar las convocatorias de cada uno de los partenariados. Pero creo, si te parece, Marina, que sería más importante ahora que Daniela Lueth nos compartiera su presentación y nos explicara el partenariado de Food Systems. So maybe we
Estupendo.
can switch to English, Daniela. And I have made an oral presentation, and I have been setting the scene for Cluster 6 activities. So maybe it's time for you to show us what you have to tell us about this partnership on food systems, which Spanish entities are extremely interested in. So Daniela, whenever you want, floor is yours.
Many thanks, José Manuel, and delighted to be here together with Jorge to give you a bit of a bird's view. So, José, you already explained the process and how the partnership fits in. Now, we also want to take a step back to give you a bit of an overview on how does this partnership actually fit into the policy landscape, and what's the story behind the partnership before we start. Basically, what is the process leading up to before Hugo will give you an overview about food pass, a really crucial element to bring this partnership to life. And I will share my screen.
Now it's coming.
You see it?
Yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful.
You can minimize our faces. You have our faces in your right side. Yes.
Perfect.
That's fine.
So as said, I want to give you a bit of a bird's view of sustainable food system transformation, a European R&I perspective where the partnership really is a crucial element. If we start from the policy context, we have the European Green Deal, and all the activities, especially in Cluster 6, really serve to fulfill the Green Deal that aims nothing less to improve the well-being of people in Europe, making Europe climate neutral by 2050, protecting our natural habitat that will be good for people, but also planet and economy. And inclusiveness is an elementary part there. Now, when we look at the European Green Deal, what we look at when we talk about sustainable food systems partnership is really the farm to fork strategy. While at the end, I will show you that the partnership really connects the dots to many other initiatives and activities on European level. Now, the farm to fork strategy will become a framework legislation on a union sustainable food system. And it really aims to ensure environmental, social, and economic sustainability. We expect this to happen in Q4 this year. So we had the strategy, then there was an impact assessment and also an open public consultation. And now that will lead into framework legislation. And we have a couple of other activities linked to it, which you see on the left-hand side, that is very closely connected to the goals of the partnership. For example, the last two, which you will see also foreseen for this year, the review of the EU schools scheme legal framework with a view to refocus the scheme on healthy and sustainable food, and also the proposal for EU-level targets for food waste reduction. Now, all these elements provide a legal base where, when we look at these partnerships that José Manuel already presented, these are R&I partnerships, so they try to go beyond what is legally foreseen, to touch beyond that, to aim for more, to really help fulfilling the Green Deal, and using R&I here really as an enabler. And to just underline that, we have Food 2030. Food 2030 is an EU R&I policy framework to future-proof our food systems. And this defines really how we do R&I in a multi-actor approach, inclusive, with what purpose. So it's really about creating impact-driven R&I, and also to support the transition to a healthy planet. So also to support the Green Deal by 2050, where we have a climate neutral, especially where consumption and production of food operate within safe planetary boundaries. And the Food 2030 operates with 4 priorities. So here we really work in a systemic approach, and that is what the partnership also will do, to take a holistic systemic approach, because it is complex. So we can't take the complexity out of the challenges. So we incorporate this into the solution by saying, well, if you do something, it has to serve 4 priorities. And that is what you see on the orange colored box on the right hand side. Nutrition for sustainable and healthy diets. At the same time, solutions have to be climate smart and environmentally sustainable. We have to create circular and resource efficient food systems, and we have to enable innovation through and by empowerment of communities. So this also includes all place-based solutions, local solutions, really to make sure that the whole of society benefits from it and takes part in those solutions. Now, how do we operate Food 2030? We operate with pathways for action. No need to read them all on the right-hand side, but just to introduce you a bit to the concept, as the partnership also subscribes to Food 2030, we have operationalized basically Food 2030 with 10, now 11 pathways. We currently rework them in light of the next strategic plan, 25 to 27. To really look at what has been done in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe, where we're in right now, and what are still white spots, gaps we have to fulfill to really help the transition to sustainable food systems. And we do that by pathways such as governance, that links also to how do you govern a food system in a city, for example. How do you introduce food councils, for example, or food banks? How do you create sustainable food procurement in schools? But also a pathway on alternative proteins, on personalized nutrition. But we also take it back a step further and say, like, well, the partnership will operate firstly for European food systems, but it will always connect also to an international angle. And we have a pathway here also, food systems in Africa, that connects the dots to beyond Europe. Now, just to give you a bit inspiration for a summer read over the summer, this summer, there are a couple of really publications that explain how Food 2030 works, what it aims for, also how to operationalize it in member states, for example, via science policy interfaces. So how do you connect really research via science to policy making? We had a high-level expert group that wrote the report. Everyone at the table can highly recommend it, but also reports that even go a bit deeper into specific pathways, like on the left-hand side, urban food system transformation in the context of Food 2030, that really looks at how food systems can evolve and should be transformed on the local level in cities. Now, bringing all this together in the partnership for sustainable food systems for people, planet, and climate, which is really a strategic endeavor for the next 7 to 10 years. So why do we have these partnerships? And José Manuel, as far as I can trust my little Spanish skills, already touched a bit upon it. The partnerships really aim to drive green and digital transitions, and they are kind of an evolution of what we had before in terms of ERA-nets or JPIs. And no need to read them all on the left-hand side, but just to give an overview, we have 49 partnerships. And within cluster 6, we have 8. José Manuel gave you an overview of in which year and even in which destination which is located. But just to underpin a bit the reasoning, why do we have partnerships? It allows really working in a multi-stakeholder approach. And it allows to make high-performing actors cooperate better with a strategic mindset for a longer time, with also a bigger budget. You've seen the budget numbers, and really to speed up research and innovation and make these activities more efficient, more broad scale, more inclusive across member states and associated countries. Now, how does a partnership come to life? This is a long process, and you see a time scale here with the orange arrow from 2022 to 2023, but we squeezed in even on the left hand side 2019, 2021. So this dates back for already a long time. Since autumn 2019, several workshops have been organized to actually discuss content and process of this partnership. There have been several narratives being written, so that really underpin the reasoning and the motivation that was consolidated into one narrative in 2021, written by nearly 50 experts from across Europe. And the narrative served as a baseline for templates. So now we're in 2022, and in 2022, what happened? The co-creation started for the SRIA, the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda, that really sets out what is the partnership aiming to do. And you find this SRIA actually, you have a link here published on the SCAR website, and I will tell you in a second what is SCAR. But just if we move along this time scale, so the SRIA, it was a year-long process to really define what will the partnership do between the next 7 to 10 years. Then we from the Commission, we asked member states, requested their commitments for each partnership to get an indication, even if these partnerships have been discussed already before, is it realistic? Do we have enough willpower and also commitment behind those partnerships? And the final template that really provides an overview of all key elements of the future partnership was also published on the Commission website. Now, the partnerships are part of Horizon Europe, as you just heard. So we have a corresponding topic in the Horizon Europe web program 23-24, while work on the SRIA was ongoing also with public consultation. And then end of this year, the SRIA was finalized, and the calls for proposals were opened to find a consortia that submits a proposal in March and the first annual work plan. And right now, the proposals are under evaluation by our research and executive agency, by a panel of independent experts, really scrutinizing the proposals, analyzing its validity, and also its purpose to fulfill what the call has set out to do. And here on the left-hand side, you can see the overall budget for the lifetime of the Food Systems Partnership, where we have a co-fund. That means 30% comes via the Horizon Europe budget. That is 175 million you've already seen. And the other 350 million are expected to come from member states. Now, what you see on the right-hand side, you see the logo of SCAR. So what is SCAR and why is it important here? And I just want to introduce you into this process, as these partnerships are really a long-term process and really an effort of many parties. SCA is a comitology register, so it's basically a network of more than 35 countries, member states and associated countries, to give strategic policy advice within agriculture, fisheries, food, forestry, wider bioeconomy, with focus on R&I. And it's really to create an integrated era, so the European research area, by increasing connections, removing barriers, and really stimulating the co-creation between sectors to deliver innovation and provide solutions. And SCA has 11 working groups, and one working group is the food systems working group, and this really served as the co-creation platform for the partnership. And without guiding you too much to the mission, but the mission of the food systems partnership was already at the beginning very much aligned with what the partnership aimed to do. And it was a perfect co-creation place where the SCA working group really put together all efforts, brought different stakeholders, also different actors of the whole food system together to co-create the partnership up to the strategic research innovation agenda and the proposal submission, and was a perfect meeting place for really bringing the partnership to life. Now, before handing over to Hugo, just circling back on what the partnership now really sets out to do and how is it connected to policy. So you see on the left-hand side the farm to fork foreseen framework, and on the right-hand side the partnership overarching objective. And if you just follow me on the lower left side, the two round circles, the objective of the legislative framework is setting the foundations for the systemic changes that are needed by all actors of the food system, including policymakers, business operators, and consumers, in order to accelerate the transition to a sustainable EU food system. While the partnership aims nothing less to collectively develop and implement an EU-wide committed research innovation partnership to accelerate the transition towards healthy diets that are safe and sustainably produced and consumed in resilient EU and global food systems. So you see, they both reinforce each other, they build up on each other, and they support each other. So really, both are crucial in helping us in the transformation. And the partnership at the same time will support a range of other initiatives, as it is really a systemic partnership that tackles and approaches all angles of the food system. And with my last slide, I want to invite you, just summer is in front of the door, but December will come soon, and we have a high-level Food 2030 conference on the 4th and 5th of December here in Brussels for green and resilient food systems, with one side event also paths, and you will hear more in a second. Being present there, so really warmly invite you. You have a link there in the PowerPoint to follow up when registrations open. I'm sure it's going to be a great event to network, to hear the latest stage of R&I in food systems, and also to look together into the future, what needs to be done with the partnership and other activities to help the transformation. And with that one, many thanks, and I hand over to Hugo.
Thank you very much indeed, Daniela. Thank you very much for your clear presentation. You have perfectly explained the policy framework regarding the food system partnership. It was great to see how it's linked to the Green Deal objectives with the farm to fork strategy and with the Food 2030 policy initiative or policy framework that you are also working on. So thank you very much for that. And now let me give the floor to Hugo de Vries. Hugo, you will know, is the research director of INRAE, but he's also the coordinator of coordination and support actions that the European Commission launched a few years ago to support and to contribute to the implementation of this partnership. So Hugo, whenever you want, you can get started, but let me firstly remind the participants that they can send both of you questions through the Q&A module that it's within the Zoom. No matter whether they are in Spanish or in English, we will discuss them with Daniela and Hugo afterwards. So Hugo, whenever you want, you can get started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. Thank you very much, Marina, for the very kind and honorable invitation. It's a pleasure to be with you, señoras, señores. Hablo solamente un poco español, dus I have to excuse myself that I need to continue in English, or I can also go on in Dutch, but I think that you prefer than English. So, and then also, of course, it's an honor, as always, to have a presentation after Daniela, and in this case, Daniela and Jorge, about what is in the mind of the European Commission, because we have been working so much together that whatever I'm telling, I'm also telling partly based on the experiences that we have gathered together, and that was really a pleasure. I'm also wondering a little bit, I'm here speaking to a Spanish audience, knowing that in Spain, the food sector with about 430,000 employees, I think 140 billion euros of turnover, the largest, also one of the largest export sectors of Spain, very also, I think, overall in Europe seen as very entrepreneurial. I think many great ideas are coming from your country. So what can I tell you more than that you already know yourself? Let's hope that with an initiative that is broadly in Europe, that there are at least some elements where you also like to contribute with your creativity and your passion. I think then the Sustainable Food Systems Partnership can become a success. But we need definitely your inspiration and your entrepreneurial spirit, like you do in Prima, for example, for the Mediterranean, where also food is the core topic next to water and farming systems. But I think your role there could very well serve to also help the partnership to become a success. And also what you do in ERA for Health, if you look to food and health, it's so closely connected. You are the coordinator of this partnership. I think also if we can mutually exchange our ideas, I think we can become a success as well. With this introduction, I like to step to food passes. And by saying a few words more than Daniela said, she explained that in a way we have already passed through a trajectory together with DG RTD and the SCAR, where we have been looking at what are the needs in the food domain, and I think we all recognize them. We know, and you know, especially in Spain, if we look to the very importance of water. Without water, there will be no food, or water is maybe the most important food that we even know. That already is a driving factor. We know, of course, that's related to climate change. We know that's related to biodiversity. Those are all drivers. But we also know that what we do in the food systems today with the losses that we generate, if we are 1/3 spoiling at the end of a food chain, we are spoiling everything what we put in before. So what we need to do is to revisit our food systems and try to reconsider what we are doing. Also, if we take for 2050 and 2060, the alarming figures about our available renewable resources for whatever we do in the bioeconomy, and food is 60% of it at least, then those alarming figures also tells us that we need to reconsider the uses of our food and food products. If we look to what we produce in renewable resources, that over 50% could be considered as co-products or waste, which is undervalorized or not valorized at all. Let's take olives, a very important product. Only 10% of what we do in olives is for the destination food, and 90% is co-products. And we valorize it, but we valorize it not in the probably most intelligent way. There is so much value in the ingredients that we can do more. All those needs, they are characterized today in publications, in literature, in reports, and so on. There is a lot of evidence that we need to act, and then also we have defined ways to act at the European level. That is, as Daniela said, that is written down in a narrative, then in a template. The template is more or less a business plan for the future partnership sustainable food systems. And then recently, and that was published in the end of last year, the beginning of this year, a strategic research agenda. You can find the links here to those documents. I think the foundation why there is a partnership needed overall in Europe, I think it's very clear. But I also like to stress that in the partnership, we address in particular the synergistic topics that we all have in Europe. But we cannot work in food if we don't respect the local priorities. Our food is based on our local cultures. Our heritage is based in food. So also the priorities that are rising there, they may be very different in Greece, in Spain, in Finland, in Iceland, where we are, but also those need to be or need to get an impulse because they all contribute to our sustainable food systems of tomorrow. So we need to look to synergistic topics, but we also need and certainly do not forget the local priorities. So then what is the vision about? That was already said by Daniela in the last slide. The vision is that the actors collectively will achieve environmentally friendly, socially and fair food systems, economically viable, healthy and safe. And that is to realize the goals as stated in the Green Deal, but also to realize the goals that are defined by the United Nations, because whatever we do, we cannot afford to have trade-offs somewhere else in our continents. You're strongly related to the Latin American countries. What we do in Europe should be well aligned with them, but also with Africa, Asia, and so on. So we have here the words collective. The problems are so huge that we cannot work in isolation anymore. We need to act collectively, and that is stated what the partnership is focusing on. And of course, we need to mobilize research and innovation to accelerate this transition. That is often said, and I think I can repeat it. And even with that, we hope that we be of support of a framework or a legislative framework for sustainable food systems where the evidence is prepared by many, many different experts. I think we cannot even say anymore that we are experts in food systems because the area is so complex and so diverse. But if we collect and combine our different expertises, we may become jointly experts in helping our food systems further. What are the focus areas of the Partnership Sustainable Food Systems? And that is, I think, very important for all actors in Spain. And then I have to make a remark first. The Partnership Sustainable Food Systems is asked to focus on post-farming and post-fishing. But how to develop sustainable food systems if we forget the farming systems? If you forget agroecological principles, for example. So we cannot reach sustainable outcomes if we don't work together with the others. But it is also very clear there are partnerships defined in that area. We need to work together with them, and we need to focus on the topics that are crucial after harvest or after catching. And what are those? We have defined them with a group of experts, as said by Daniela. The first is change the way we eat or what we eat. It's very much focused on the diets, healthy diets, and also our diverse diets all over Europe. The second is change the way we process and supply, but in what direction and where to focus on. Change the way we connect as citizens with food production. We are consumers, but we are also often professionals in food, directly involved as a farmer or as an entrepreneur, an artisanal producer, but it could also be as a financier or somebody in the legislative area. So we are connecting in different ways. So how to do that in a way that we jointly contribute to our food systems of tomorrow? And then change the way we govern the food systems. Could we still work with the principles that we have used before, with the legislation that we have used before? Can we set up the clusters locally that they can also in a fair way compete with the bigger ones? We need the bigger ones. We cannot forget global trade, but we also need the local ones because it is there where often we see that we lose a part of our resources, where we also are enriching our cultural food heritage. So we need both of them, but how to do that in a fair way? That are questions that are addressed in the fourth focus area. And to reach really innovations in those areas and to touch upon the new science questions, we need to have co-funding. We need to have an observatory that is following what we are doing, because if we don't know what the outputs are, where do we need to invest in next? So we need to have an observatory. That's easy to say, but very difficult if we look to the different domains of foods where we generate data. We need experimental stations where we not only dream, but where we test what we have in our mind. So that's called a knowledge hub of food system labs. That could be policy labs, city labs, that could be fab labs, that could be field labs, that could be computer-aided virtual environments where we try to mimic logistic chains and so on. So we need to combine those. And we need to share our knowledge as well as possible, because whatever we do in our partnership, we are only a tiny group. So we need to reach a snowball effect that all actors in the food systems are reached, and that they are all together are going to act. That makes much more sense than just myself and some of my colleagues in food passes. We have said this, and this was also no, I think Daniela took it out. I've said we need to work with the other partnerships because they work in areas where the food system partnership itself is not going to work. But on what topics? That is one question. Are we going to work on diversity, on circularity, on adaptability, on fair and just systems, from farming till logistics, till consumption in our restaurants and so on? Those are topics that we really need to define together. And in our approaches, we also need to work together, as well as in our observatories and labs. Then, as Daniela said, to step into such a big partnership from nothing, because we were with the SCAR also saying there is not an initiative that's touching upon this food system in its widest context. That is far too risky. To immediately put 500 million euros of our tax money into something without being prepared, we need to have an action, which was defined as a CSA, a coordination and support action, and that was food passes. Where we are, and that is the simple focus of food passes, we need to develop the prototype or the blueprint, at least the partnership in its most simple forms, in its governance model, in its modus operandi, in its examples that could be shared and maybe serve as the basis for new questions in the future, and so on. That is what food passes needs to do. And it was said, we need to be inclusive. That's fantastic question, but how to respond to that? What does it mean, being inclusive? If we like to be inclusive, we need to have cities involved, we need to have regions involved, we need to have states involved, we need to have at the EU-wide scale, the EU organizations involved, and we even need to have at the global scale, the FAO or the One Planet Network with the World Wildlife Funds and other organizations involved. We need to have that at the public side, and we need to have that at the private side. So the Food and Drink Europe, where FIAP is your national member organization, and Food and Drink Europe is serving at the EU-wide level. The Copa-Cogeca's representing farmers and cooperatives. We all need to have them involved, academia and foundations. The foundations in Europe, and you have many in Spain as well, they represent a budget which is even exceeding the budget of the European Commission in the Horizon Europe programs. So if they can support the transitions, we may make bigger steps forward. And so we have approached them all, and luckily those network organizations all became part of food passes. And now we need to work together, speak the same language, and so on. So food passes is also the project where we try to build a common language between all those different organizations with all the different priorities, with all the different definitions, and we try to align them. I will not say that we will succeed, that is arrogant, and most likely we will not, but we try to do our best to get a common ground and a common language between those organizations. Because it is our ambition that this partnership here, imagined as a bird will fly, that is able to face the challenges, to observe them, to learn from them, and to adapt our courses thanks to an observatory, and also thanks to looking to trade-offs that may happen somewhere else in the world, but also seeking co-benefits with other organizations in the world, that we try as a bird to focus on those and to direct our course in the right direction. But therefore, we need to have a governance. We need to have system approaches, and we need to have funding strategies that are aligned. But it should be aligned and based on something about what we learn in case studies, based on topics that are relevant in RIPE, research and innovation, but also science to policy and education. That is where RIPE stands for. And it should be based on charters where we indicate what is important and what is less important. And with that together, we hope we can fly together with our other boards, representing other partnerships in the right direction. We have said, and this is, I don't want to explain in much detail, but that is the way we have also defined our project, our food passes project. It is a kind of structured approach. It's a systems approach where we try to see what are the challenges. Based on that, we try to define our funding strategies, but we like to experiment before funding. We like to experiment what are topics that work and what does not work. We like to learn from that and also connect it to what we know in science, but also what we don't know. With that, we like to focus on topics. We cannot do everything, but we like to focus on the priorities. And with the focus topics, we always like to check if there are co-benefits of trade-offs. And with that information, we like to go back to our funding strategies. This is the way we have organized food passes, and this is probably also the way that the future partnership will work. Then, is Spain already active? I can say luckily yes, thanks to FIAP, who is a full partner in our project, and the persons who are mentioned here, they are my very good friends and colleagues in Spain. They make a lot of things happen because they bring in exemplary cases. For example, they have taught us what are living labs, how could they function in practice. They are also co-coordinating the EU-wide and even beyond the EU, the national technology platforms, which are instrumental because in the national technology platforms, there are ministries, there are private sectors, there is academia, there are regions, there could even be cities. They are united to define common agendas. And how does that work? And what does it mean for our future partnership? So they bring in this knowledge, really essential. And they are, and I come back to that, also hosting very crucial conferences where this is discussed. But then, knowing that you will preside the European Commission for the next 6 months, what are topics where you hopefully will take a lead? I have no right to say that those are the topics. I've only put a question mark. Would those be topics where Spain, with their experiences, can help us further? For example, creating and co-creating a vitrine with co-creation cases that you already work in your business ecosystems, in your national technology platform, in your living labs. Would that be an option to further explore? Would it be that you play a crucial role in bringing those topics that are related to our food cultural heritage, but where you see that we can make bigger steps forward? Would that be a domain where Spain would play a leading role? In the funder strategies, you work already in other partnerships. Could you share those experiences with us, that we develop a funders forum and strategy where those lessons learned could be exchanged? Could you help in setting up this sustainability charter? It's fantastic if universities, they are often a driving force in their region. It is fantastic if they adapt to something that is shared at the European level that's based on indicators for sustainability. Are you helping us with the future topics for the calls? And would it also be possible, we have the One Planet network with the FAO, with the UNEP, with the World Wildlife Fund and other organizations, but you are connected to Latin America. Could you help us in bringing those exemplary cases that could serve as a good example, or those where it doesn't work, and maybe in joint forces where we can making steps that help us both at the two sides of the Atlantic Ocean? It would be great. I have here, I've put it always a question mark, and I leave it to the discussion, but I'm convinced that you can help us, and it would be great if you are willing to do it. I'd like to thank you very much for your attention. And if you like to join us, there is, before the event in Brussels, and maybe we can ask for some buses, we can first go to Valencia. It's a wonderful town. I know it luckily by heart. You are hosting the next event where the food system cases are discussed, presented, and serving others in Europe, and especially the young generation, to see what is possible in our wonderful food systems domain. It is hosted by you. It is by the University of Valencia and IATA. It is hosted by FIAP. I'm sure that your ministry is behind and supportive. We are going to visit, I think, even living labs there. So I'm sure, and I'm hoping that you will meet us there and discuss the topics of tomorrow. With that, I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm really looking forward to share the forces with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your presentation. Thank you very much indeed. Actually, we already have two invitations, one from your side to get to Valencia and one from Daniela to get to Brussels on the 4th and 5th of December, I guess that Daniela said. So thank you very much indeed. For sharing, and Hugo, for your effort to get the common ground for this partnership. Thank you very much for that. You may know that Eduardo Cotillas was working with us and for CDTI a few years ago. Then he moved to FIAP, so we're extremely happy to have him on board, because he has been working quite hard on the definition of this partnership as well from the Spanish side. So thank you very much to Eduardo as well. Now it's time for the participants to ask you specific questions. I would like to start with two short questions from our side, just to trigger this discussion. Because Daniela, you mentioned that, and Jorge can intervene as well as many times as he wants. You mentioned the policy framework that is going to change, or that the legislative framework that is going to be set up by the end of the year due to the farm to fork strategy. My question to you, Daniela, is how is this expected to influence, and what impact is it expected to have, firstly on the legislative framework, what consequences may it have, and secondly on the research and innovation programs? Can we expect specific actions regarding this new legislative framework, Daniela?
That's a very tricky question, Jose Manuel. I'm not sure I can answer this, since this is speculation. Now, of course, once this comes into place, it will serve the basis of like what we are aiming for, and then it can be looked at how far are we away from it. But I would say from an R&I perspective, we have the Green Deal and we have the farm to fork strategy. That's what we set our targets to, and that's why we work towards to. So I would say there's no need to wait for the legislative framework. It will not limit us, that's for sure. Of course, we're all curious on what happens and how it looks like, but I wouldn't say it will set us off track or in a different direction or influence it, because the Food Systems Partnership, we have the SRIA, the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda. It set out what it aims to do. Now, of course, there will be enough flexibility to crises that happen, things that occur, to be flexible. But what we're aiming to do within the next 7 to 10 years with the partnership, we have the goal in sight. And I think that is set irrespective of what we will see end of the year.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Daniela. A question to you, because you explained perfectly a few focus areas within the partnership. If I'm not mistaken, most of them fit within the post-harvest phase of the food production side. But in that regard, my question is, to what extent the food industry is expected to play an important role, and what can we expect, what benefits can we expect, or can the food industry expect just for joining the partnership and the activities to be carried out within the partnership? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. That's a really challenging question also, and also a real question for Eduardo, for example, or for Food and Drink Europe. In the partnership, there are, let's say, two main pillars. One is the external calls, where consortia can apply for topics that are predefined, of course, by the partnership itself. That could, for example, be something related to combining sustainable and healthy diets, or something related to trying to connect to diets in schools, the local community, etc. And can we come up with, for example, 5 different exemplary cases in Europe where it works based on locally produced resources to have an let's say zero loss. Now that's of course an ambition that we cannot reach, but as low losses as possible, but all thanks to a circle that is defined with different actors. That could be topics where industry can step in and needs to step in, because without industry, without producers, without processors working in kitchens, without the catering, without the ones who are recycling, without the ones who are maybe measuring the data, etc. That is often industry. Without that, a topic will not progress. So there they have a role. It's a little bit a reactive role, because there is a call and then you can respond to it. And the second pillar is the internal program, where there needs to be an observatory created. There needs to be a hub of food system labs created. And that is something where industry has a lot of experience with. So we hope that also in the internal calls, how to set that up. Where do we need to look to? How to be sure that we have a co-creation process? For example, there are companies that are working directly with citizens together in a kind of a glass wall processing facility, where they are working to see what is well perceived, what is less perceived. We know with some technologies, and that's already since the GMO discussions, that some technologies are not well perceived, even though they could reduce the energy or water usage with a factor of 10. So how to do that in a joint way between industry, citizens, scientists, that we are really getting breakthroughs in technologies that we need in the future. That is for sure. So there we need, in those exemplary cases, also the industry who is proactive, not only reactive, but especially they're proactive. And that was also defined already and signed between the European Commission and the industry, Food and Drink Europe, and other parties, the code of conduct, how to change our way of acting as industries. It's a fantastic document. There is a lot on willingness, but how to transform that into something where it becomes a guideline for industries to change their way of acting. Also there we see a hopefully a proactive role of the industry. If the industry should sit only at the reactive side and wait for it, and they are our most important sectors in Europe, I think it's overall true, then we will never change our systems, not the scientists as I am. We need to have them in this proactive role. Is that answering your question, Jose?
Perfectly, Hugo, perfectly. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you in a minute to part of what you mentioned about living labs. But firstly, I would like to know whether Jorge or Daniela may have a crystal ball to let us know what the future holds for us. Because Daniela, if I'm not mistaken, you said that the expected budget for the partnership was around 525 million. And from that overall budget, 175 may come from the European Commission. So my question to you is how confident you are regarding the budget from the member state side. Do you think you're going to collect that, or receive the compromise from the member states to achieve or to allocate 350 million euros for this partnership? Thank you.
Yes, let's see, my crystal ball, and then Jorge can complement. Well, I mean, we to avoid the crystal ball, we asked member states for their commitment last year in spring. And that was non-binding, but it was an indication. And after that, we said we go ahead with a partnership because we have enough commitment in kind and in cash. So there we're very confident. Now it is the co-fund operates in terms of it is always only 30%. So if member states contribution is less, also EC contribution is less. That's kind of how it works. In the current call 23-24, you see in a budget coming of 45 million from the Commission, and then it is asked the other 70% to come from via the proposal. Now the proposal is currently under evaluation, so we cannot talk about that. But from the member state commitments who really thought about all the partnerships coming up and indicated in commitment, we are pretty confident.
Great, good news, Daniela.
Good news, yes.
Good news. Let's hope that member states can eventually compromise this budget for that, because otherwise it would be a pity, because we will be, let's say, not using money already allocated for that. Okay. Great. Ugo, you mentioned, and I think you want to intervene as well, but my point to you is you mentioned the Living Labs, and Living Labs is kind of a trendy topic, which is going to be, or applicants and the stakeholders can find Living Labs under the mission on soil, under the agroecology partnership, and now under this partnership as well. So I think I have the feeling that we're using one term to discuss or to talk about different things. What can you tell us about these Living Labs under the food partnership, and what differences may applicants find compared to other Living Labs under the mission on soil or under the mission or the partnership on agroecology? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jose. That's a very interesting question, because we partly have to define it. We have written 3 pages in the SRIA, and where we have given, of course, some hints, and also based on suggestions of very different experts. But it partly needs to be developed, and it is for sure it needs to be complementary to what is done in the soil and in the agroecology partnership, the soil mission. What will be the main difference, or the main angle of attack that will be different? The soil mission and the agroecology partnership start with the production side, or let's say the field, I think. The partnership starts with the society or the market. So it will be a reversed way of thinking how to get those products consumed in a healthy way that are also helping our planet further. So it will be more Living Labs that are oriented towards, for example, an experimental restaurant or an experimental supermarket. So very close to where the citizens are. Even if we are talking governance issues, it could be considered as policy labs, where also some European projects are now focusing on, or city labs. And you have a wonderful example in Barcelona of a living lab, a city living lab. Those kind of living labs are bringing together the citizens with their consumer preferences and the product itself. So it is always coming from, let's say, the citizen or the consumer as a starting point. And thus also in the way we supply. For example, we can think about computer-aided virtual environments where we bring much closer to the citizens where is their food coming from, and can you mimic that? Can you see that in a virtual environment? Then you can maybe also better make choices, because you may be confronted with consequences of production or of transport globally that you do not prefer. So you can also, as a citizen, again, look to, but what do I buy? Where is it supplied from? And so on, as well as from the way it is produced. So I think in that sense, our living labs will be different. So that is the answer to the Living Lab question. If you allow me, I also like to come back on the budget. I'm not involved in the large partnership preparation action because I'm coordinating a preparatory action that needs to give advice. So if I would be involved in the bigger one, then I can always say, oh, that's very nice advice that you give, and you just absorb what you are saying or what your group is saying. So that could not be for conflict of interest. But I've also been asking this question. We have been asking this question in food passes. If we look to the overall budget of 500 million euros, more or less, if we take 30%, 175 of the Commission, it seems to be a big sum. But if we look to the overall investment in the food sector, it is nothing. So the question is then, is it already a big sum or is it not big? It's not a big sum. But if then you see it, or the member states see it as an on top of existing actions, then it still can be a huge sum, because we also know about the depths of states and so on. So if we are able to combine what we are already doing in an intelligent way together, and also take then, as I said in the beginning of my talk, synergistic topics, but also include our priorities where we are also investing in, then it should not be a major sum. Even more, if we look, for example, to the regions, they are, but that is depending on the way it is communicated, they are directly involved in what's taking place in sustainable food systems. If they can match their budgets, for example, coming from the CAP or what else, then again, this is not a big sum. If the foundations, as I said, if I was well informed, their overall budget is more than 1,000 billion euros, and their annual spending budget is over 80 billion euros. If they are becoming committed to what's taking place, but of course their priorities then needs to be taken into account, again, this could be considered a small sum. So I'm also highly confident. Who is not willing to go home until I'm investing in the sustainable food systems of our children? You cannot go home by saying, I don't want to do anything in it. So it is, I think, a question of communicating that correctly, let it fit with your priorities and synergistic topic at European level, and mobilize the ones who have those capacities to do it. But maybe I'm too optimistic.
Okay, thank you. Hugo, you know, the audience is asking us if whether you have a slide, a link of the Living Lab you referred to in Barcelona City. Do you have any further information about it? A slide, a link, or something for the audience to check exactly what you were discussing about the Living Lab in Barcelona?
No, I don't have the example here as a slide, but I'm very much willing to send it to you.
Great.
The director, or the lady directrice, is Rosina Malagrida, and she is, I think it's the, but I'm pronouncing it not correctly, the AXA Foundation, who is also involved, I think. But if you Google on Rosina Malagrida Living Lab in Barcelona, you will definitely find it. But I can send a link to you. A pleasure to share.
Thank you very much. You know, we will be sharing your presentation to the audience, so we can wait maybe even until tomorrow just to share the link as well, or the information about it, okay?
With pleasure, yeah. Thank
you very much, Hugo. Daniela, last question to you from my side. Trying to use again the crystal ball you mentioned before, because we have been focusing today's session on 23, 24, well, actually 21, 24 partnerships. But what news can you share about the future, the next future regarding 25, 27? Are there new partnerships which can be launched in the near future? What can you know about it, or what can you share about it?
Thank you. I will try my best. Well, there will be a second batch of partnerships What we know so far, for sure, it will be less than the 49 we already had, just because also many aspects are already covered in that sense. There are discussions ongoing. There will be the suggestions for the partnerships. They will be launched on the EC website in July, and then these will be discussed with the SPC. So their discussions will happen to really define, do we need another partnership in this area? And what is the added value, and what would be the next steps? So for sure, there will be some, there will be less. Which ones we need to see after the publication of the suggestions.
Great, thank you. It will be highly interested in knowing what other opportunities may arise for partnerships for the applicants. So that will be great to know.
Absolutely.
Marina, I don't have any further questions for the three speakers. I'm not sure whether you have any final comment from your side.
Well, from my side, it's true that there is no more questions from the public, but only to say that today in half an hour and so, we are hosting here at the SOST CDTI Brussels office an event with our colleagues from the IGLO Open Network, which is the network of the offices of different member states here in Brussels. A session on the priorities of the Spanish presidency on research and innovation. And I can advance you that our permanent representative from research and innovation is going to explain a little bit further on the one of the priorities, which is the prima continuation in the coming years as well, and also in the promotion and relaunching of the contact with Latin America in the different domains in this global getaway initiative of Commission as well. So further information, do not hesitate. We will send you as well the slides if you are interested in.
Great, thank you very much. Then I would like to thank Hugo, Daniela, and Jorge for your participation. We have kindly taken note of your invitations to attend the events in Valencia and Brussels on the 4th and 5th of December, and by the end of November, I guess that Hugo said. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for joining us today. And Marina, the floor is yours to say goodbye to everybody and to close the session.
Thank you so much to all, of course. Muchas gracias a todos vosotros que nos habéis estado acompañando durante casi esta hora y media. Hemos llegado a ser unas 50 personas entre participantes, 44 y speakers que estamos reunidos hoy aquí. Simplemente quería daros las gracias a todos por acompañarnos, por supuesto, y emplazaros a la semana que viene. La semana que viene tenemos otro webinario también centrado en una parte del clúster 6 que está más relacionada con medio ambiente, impacto climático y agua, y que también cogerá la parte más medioambiental del clúster 5. Con ello llegaremos a la sesión 7 de estos webinarios. Y en esta ocasión nos acompañará nuestra compañera Lidia Fernández, que es punto nacional de contacto también de la parte de medio ambiente para el clúster 6 y el clúster 5. Recordaros que estos webinarios es el resultado del esfuerzo entre nuestros compañeros de programa marco, de la división de programa marco en CDTI Madrid y aquí en la oficina del CDTI en Bruselas, para ofreceros esta visión general y, digamos, actualizada sobre estas iniciativas, los partnerships relacionados con los clústeres del Pilar 2 de Horizonte Europa. Sin más, nos despedimos aquí. Muchísimas gracias a todos y nos vemos el lunes que viene, lunes 26, como siempre, a las 11 aquí en Bruselas. Gracias.
Hugo, Daniela, Jorge, thank you very much indeed for joining us today, okay?
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Gracias. That was on our side, definitely. Thank you very much.
Venga, hasta luego.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Gracias.
Next meeting, Hugo, you will be speaking Spanish, okay?